ICS4U, we'll be creating our own classes in Java in this lesson. So this is the start of Unit 2 of our course. And in IntelliJ, I've already taken the liberty of creating a new class, a new project called Circle. So make sure you call it Circle with a capital C. And when you create your class, call it Circle as well. However, you're not going to make a main method. We won't have any main method in this program, and you'll see why in a minute. So when we make a new class, as we've been using classes, we've used the string class extensively. We've used the scanner class to make scanner objects, and we've learned a few methods from there. And classes are like blueprints. We refer to them as like the cookie cutter. And then every time you make an object, it's like you're making a cookie out of the cookie cutter. Use the analogy of blueprints for now. So our blueprints, we may go to an architect, maybe we want to make a new condominium building, and the architect makes blueprints for us. Well, the condominium isn't built yet, but we have all the plans for it, and we're ready to go. We're ready to hire our construction manager so that the construction company can come and start making the foundation, whatever else. So very similarly, we're going to be making a class here, but this is just the instructions. So we'll start off, no main method. We're going to be making some variables. So we want to make double variables. I use the public keyword in front of there. Now the public keyword means that this variable that I'm creating is going to be available to all methods in the class. And I'm just going to call it radius. So we're just so that you know, we're going to be making a class that allows us to define a circle type object. So we'll have an object called myCircle, for example. It'll have as an attribute radius, and it'll have a behavior called area. So if you access the area behavior or the area method, it will calculate the area for you based on the property radius. So here's your property called radius right now. This is a state variable. It's a state variable because it's available to everything in the class, and it will be used throughout the class. And now we have to do something that's a little bit different we've never done before, called the constructor. So the constructor allows us to access this state variable anywhere we want. The state variable is available everywhere, but we're going to create a constructor that looks like this. The word public and the word that's the same as your class. And the constructor, I want you to think of this as a castle, okay? So the castle walls, let's say we have a messenger that has an important message. It's going to be the value of our variable, the radius. The messenger has a piece of paper that has the value of what the radius is. But the messenger is not allowed to pass anything. Maybe there's a quarantine or something. They're not allowed to pass any paper, and they're definitely not allowed to go into the castle. So they have to shout from outside of the castle walls what the value of the radius is. And they're going to be doing that like this. So we're going to have something called double R. Okay? And double R is the piece of paper that's not allowed to come into the castle. It's coming from our main method. Remember, we're going to be writing a program later on with a main method in it that uses the circle class to create a circle type object. So we're going to say this, radius, which is available inside of the castle walls, set to R. So this R thing, it might be contaminated. Maybe there's a quarantine. The horseback rider rides up to the castle and says, well, I have this variable R. I want you to have the value. You need it. And they say, well, sorry, you can't come in. Just shout it out to me, and I'll write it down on this new piece of paper called radius. So radius is the piece of paper that's inside of the castle that can then be used. Okay, so that's the constructor. Now we can create our method. This is a method called area with no parameters. So we don't need any parameters for area. Area for a circle, as you might recall, is pi r squared. Pi is just a constant. It never changes, and r is our radius. And the radius is being given to us. So we just need to feed it through this predefined thing. So here's how we'll make our method that has no parameters. Because in this case, calculating area, it's appropriate to have a method that takes in no parameters. So remember, we talked about method signatures, and we saw that, so I'm going to finish typing this out and then I'll talk about it. There we go. So area is our method, and what's to the left of the word area, the left of our method name, is the type of variable that will be returned by the method. So in this case, we're returning a double. It's public because it's available to everything inside of the class and outside of the class as well. It's available to all methods in the class. It's available to everything that we're going to be using. Okay, so now all we have to do is create a new variable called a, because that's going to be our area variable. Area equals, and we have math.py, it's predefined. We saw this in lesson 6 of our textbook, times, and remember math.pow, we're going to use that as well, and that's our method from the math class, and we'll say the base, which is radius, and the exponent is 2. So pi r squared. And finally, our return method will be returning a. Okay. And now that's it for our program that calculates, that creates our circle object from the circle. This is our circle class. It's our blueprint where we can create objects from the circle class. And it would be nice to be able to use this. I'm going to create a new file that is our main method. And actually, we could do this in the same file if we wanted to. So first I'm going to show you how to create a main method from the same file. So we're going to use the still circle.java, but this isn't what you normally do, but you'll see that in a second here. So I'm just going to let's see here. We have at the bottom of our, we'll just create public static and this is going to have to go inside of our circle class. So it's good to know where the curly braces are coming from. So this curly brace here, I'm just going to put a comment, end of circle class. Okay. Oops, class. So inside of there, I'm going to create a method, public static void main, just like we've always done. Once again, usually don't do this, but this is the quickest way to get our program up and running. And then I'll show you how to do it the more accepted way. So this is just like your main method. Remember how we created a circle object? Remember how we created a string object from the string class? Well, we're going to create a circle object from the circle class. So we'll start off with the keyword, name of the class, so circle. That's what we created up above. And we'll call it my circle. And we'll say new circle. And it takes in as a parameter, because of the constructor, a single value, and that is the value of the radius. So I'm going to say the radius is 2. And you can see that it's hinting, it's saying, what's it doing there? I'll put a semicolon. It's telling me that that's r. I didn't type in r colon, it did that. It's kind of confusing if you're at home, but I'm just going to do that again. So let's see what's happening. I type in my brackets, and I just type in the digit 2, and it automatically just does that r thing there. And that's something in, particular to IntelliJ. Okay, so now if we want to calculate the area, we can say system.out.println, well, the name of our circle, my circle, dot, and it's telling me what we can use here. And it's saying radius. It's a function, radius. And it doesn't take any parameters in, so I'm just going to put brackets like that. Or no, I'm not going to put any brackets. I'm just going to do that. And see what it prints out. See if it prints out the correct thing. So we're going to, I'm going to compile circle. So I'm going to run it to compile it. I think you can also click on the hammer, but now at least circle is compiled. So now we're going to go down to the main method. Oh, and it already ran it for me. 2.0. Hold on. I'm going to try running the main method again and see that it prints out. Oh, it's just printing out. I didn't want to print out the radius. It is printing out the correct thing. It's printing out the radius, and that's fine. That's a state variable. What I meant to do, just go back, and I wanted to print out the area because we had this method called area that we created, just area with brackets like that. Let's try running it again, our main method, and you should see that it does pi r squared, so pi times 2 squared, so it's pi times 4, which is 12.5. So that's the area of the circle. All right. Now here's the more accepted way to do this, and that's to create a new file. So in my SRC, I'm going to go down here and I'm going to right click, select new Java class. And I'm going to call it test circle. Test circle. I don't think you can see me typing, but I created, so now you have two things in your project. You have circle that has all the instructions, and I'm going to cut my main method out. And I'm going to paste it into test circle. So control, highlight it, just the main method. Oh, and I do not want to highlight the curly brace for the end of the circle class. I'm going to press Control X now, and I'm going to put it in test circle and paste it in there. And now when we run this, you'll see that it does the same thing, but it's in a separate file. And it does the same thing there. Okay? One more thing I want to show you is a new, we can add another method as well. What if we wanted a method that sets the radius? So we can set the radius to something different. So we're going to go back to our circle class, and we have our area method. We're going to have a new method called, the lights turned out on me. Okay, I just had to wave my arms around and it come back on with the motion sensor. Okay, method called set radius. And it has a new rad parameter. So it does have a parameter called new radius, so we can set the radius using this method. So whereas our area method didn't take any parameters, we just accessed it and it calculated it for us. This is public, and this time it's void. If you remember, so it's public void set radius. Remember back to when we saw method signatures, when we saw the word void on the left side of the name of our method, it meant that that method didn't return anything. Set radius doesn't return anything. All it does is it's getting a new piece of paper into our castle with the new value of our radius. So here's another horseback rider saying, oh, we've changed the radius. So we have double new rad. And in here we want to say radius equals new rad. So new rad is the value that may be contaminated that we don't want inside of our castle walls. And what we're doing is we're saying, okay, somebody shouted out what the value of new rad was from outside of the castle walls. Now we know what it is. Inside of the castle walls, we're going to say, okay, that's now the value of radius. So inside the castle walls, radius is safe, and it has the number value in there. This kind of ties into the idea that a variable has a label, which is the name of the variable, and the value is associated or to it, so that the variable's name points to the variable's value. And that's going to become more and more important as we deal with methods. The whole idea that a name is pointing to a value. Think of it as a box or a cubbyhole where there's a value inside of there and there's a label on it. Okay, so now to use this, so what I'm going to do, every time you make a change to your class, I'm going to click on Build Project. It's that hammer at the top, the green hammer in the top kind of center right. Now I'm going to go to Test Circle and I'm going to use my new method. So inside of my main method, I made a new method. We just made a new method called set radius. So let's set the new radius over here. So we set our radius to 2. Whoops. And then we got the area, but let's set the radius to something else now. So we're going to say my circle dot set radius, and let's set it to 10. And then I'm just going to copy and paste this line, print the area again and see what the change is. So when I run my program, I can just run it like this. Just get two values. We'll get the value for when the radius was 2. You can see it's 12 point whatever. And then we're getting the value after we set the radius to 10. 314 point whatever. Okay, so there's an example of creating your own class using two different types of methods. That's the end of this lesson.